Everyone, thanks for joining. Just give me a second to toggle on our live streaming services, and then we'll be good to go. All right, seems like we are live now. So, hi everyone, thanks for joining. And today's webinar is called Exploring DeepSeek, the new frontier in open source AI models. So, this webinar is presented by Akmal, who is a very regular speaker here at our webinars here at SingleStore. And Akmal, thanks for joining and helping us with this webinar. And I'm Yukti. I'll be your host for today's webinar. And if there's any questions, feel free to address them to me and I will take care of them appropriately, either answer them myself or relay them to Akmal. Just letting you know that you are currently in a listen only mode and you have the Zoom Q&A button that's available at the bottom of your console, which you can use anytime during the session. To ask any questions that you might have, and we will have a dedicated Q&A session that is going to be held by the end of this webinar, so stay tuned for it and make sure to stick around if you want to get your answers live. And I will be posting the resources to everything in the chat. You might see there's a small button down there, so we'll be using that to communicate everything. That includes the resources, the sign up page, GitHub code, and I think there's an article as well, right, Akmal? So we'll be sharing that as well. That's relevant to the webinar. And thanks everyone for tuning in. And I think we are all good to go. Yeah, just 1 second, just a reminder that we have amazing topics that are going to be coming up on 20. Okay, yesterday we had an amazing partner webinar that was building trust in AI analytics. It's called Real-Time Data Meets Governance. So if you're interested, feel free to check this out. And the recording is available on our webpage. And on May 1st, we have From JSON to Vectors, Building AI Search with SingleStore. Kai, Akmal, I think you're the speaker on this one as well. So if you enjoyed today's session, feel free to stick around for the next session as well. And on May 21st, we have another partner webinar. It's called Building Real-Time Data Pipelines Using Estuary and SingleStore. So if any of these topics are interesting to you, feel free to sign up. You can just scan the QR code and directly take you to the landing page. And stay tuned for it. If you have any feedback regarding the session, or if you have any feedback at all regarding the webinars, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, because I'll be the one to address for these things. And if you have any ideas, if you have or any projects that you're working that might be relevant for future sessions, we'd love to hear it. And feel free to drop a message to me or either Akmal on LinkedIn. So on the next page, you might see the free trial link. Akmal, can you go to the next slide? Yeah, you can scan this page and sign up for the free $600 credits that we are giving away. And you can follow along during the webinar in real time while Akmal guides you. So I think I've spoken a lot now, Akmal. Please take it away. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining.
Great. Well, thanks very much, Yukti. I don't know if you can fix my name, Yukti. I'm missing an I at the end of my surname.
Sure.
So if you can't fix it, leave it. It's okay. No big
It's
deal.
fine. I can
Sorry.
fix.
That's what happens when if you've ever been an academic. It's attention to detail. Sorry. Okay. Great. Well, thank you all very much for your time and for attending today. We know your time is precious, and hopefully, what you will learn today will be useful to you and helpful to you in terms of you evaluating this whole kind of space in terms of large language models, and kind of utilizing them. One of the things that I make a point to say often these days is that throughout my IT career, and I've been around for quite a long time, I have never seen the pace of change in terms of technology as I see today. It is really astonishing in terms of how fast everything is moving. Uh, Simply every day there is some new announcement. Okay, somebody has introduced some new model. There is some new tool. There are some new benchmark results. Okay, it's very challenging. And so the poor developer, he or she is really challenged. And if you're a business person, you're also challenged because you're kind of wondering to yourself, how am I going to use this stuff? Where is it beneficial to me in terms of the business that I run? Okay, so we'll try and help you navigate that a little bit today, okay? As if we can. We'll do our best, all right? Okay, now I apologize for the hat. Okay, so I've been a bit unwell recently, and it's cold here. So, again, apologies if you hear some sounds from outside. There is some terrible roadworks going on where I am, and don't have soundproofing, so I apologize for that in advance. In terms of the agenda today, so we'll just do a little bit of an introduction, okay? I'll say a few words about AI and ML with SingleStore, and basically looking at retrieval augmented generation for maximum securities. A couple of the options that you have here. So in addition to running things locally, for example, you could use something like private link, VPC. Those are useful, and that's part of the motivation for doing today's session. Actually, there's options available for you if you are concerned about sending your data over the wire to providers that live somewhere on the internet, but you want to work with, say, confidential data, or you are dealing with personally identifiable information, for example. Those are very challenging, and you need some means to be able to manage that. Okay. So as Yukti mentioned, and I did share the GitHub repo with her, okay, so I will be going through a number of notebooks today. They are going to be running locally. And so the link that Yukti will share with you, and I noticed this a little bit earlier that I hadn't done this, but every single notebook that I'm going to use has an associated article, which I wrote a little while back. So those are all available on Medium. Some of these have actually been published on DZone as well over the past couple of weeks. So you can read them on either place. Now you'll notice that there's 5 here. Okay, so we're actually going to be working through the first 4. So just an FYI. Okay, so don't worry about that. We'll get to that shortly. So let's go back here. Okay, so introduction. So I'll just do the usual high-level view of SingleStore. And so as a product, it can manage both OLTP and OLAP, okay, with this concept of universal storage, which is reasonably unique in the industry. Not too many other companies trying to do the same thing. A variety of ways that we could get data in. And for those of you that attended the CDC event that we did, that was something that we discussed previously. But you could be working with streaming data from, say, Kafka. You might want to do transformations using Apache Spark, for example, which we've covered previously. And there are other sources where you might want to ingest data from, say, S3 buckets or Hadoop HDFS. You can see the animation here. Okay, this is really to show this concept of pipelines, which is this very useful technology that allows you to ingest data from these sources. And by the way, that's not just a list, small list. There's lots of other possibilities as well. And at scale in parallel, okay? So that can work really well. So we do work on all 3 major cloud providers in the Western world. So AWS, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure. You can run on-prem as well. We do have some customers that prefer to do that for various reasons, legal and other. There is a Docker container too, if you're interested. Excuse me. Stored data types. So at its heart, technology started as relational, okay? And we have covered many of these other types as well. This is kind of multi-model, okay? Not multimodal, multi-model. Geospatial, okay? Full text. So Yuki and I actually did an event in December on the latest full text release. There are some customers interestingly using SingleStore for key value as well, which you may not see very often with a sort of a relational based product. Jason and Yuxi alluded to an event that we've got coming up soon where we'll be talking more about that. Time series, which is one of my favorites, simply because I like working with time series data and vectors. So vector support has actually been in the product for quite some time, and we are going to be using some vectors capability today, okay, with LangChain. So you'll see a little bit of that very soon. Just to round it off then, applications, okay, real-time decisions, AI apps, dynamic experiences, dashboards, ad hoc queries, machine learning. And one of the things that is very useful, particularly in the portal, okay, so the link that Yuxi showed you in terms of signing up for a free account, that has yes, $600 worth of credits that you can use. And we'll be looking at my account. It sometimes shows me when I log in how many credits I have left. I think I've got quite a few still left, and I've been using that account for a little while. But when you sign up, okay, so singlestore.cloud, I think it's forward slash cloud hyphen trial, or use the link that Yuxi has shared. It will just ask you a couple of questions, okay? Walk you through, ask for an email address, and then it will just verify that you are human. And once you do that and sign in, I'll show you what it looks like in just a few moments, okay? So it's very, very straightforward. You've got some resources, free shared tier that are automatically running for you. And today I am going to be using that. But if you need more capability, it's very easy to configure it. But those resources will use your credits, okay? Sometimes I've done that in the past, and that's helpful as well, okay? Because if you need a little bit more processing power, you need something, with more memory, more CPUs, etc. That is useful as well. All right, then. So some of the ways that you could work with AI and ML, and as mentioned before, we've covered some of these before. So Spark, for example, great for sort of in-memory processing as well. Big data, it's distributed. I was just talking to one of my colleagues just recently. We were talking, I mean, he was asking about what the benefits of Spark were. So this concept of resilient distributed data sets, one of the mechanisms that Spark utilizes. And it works across a distributed environment as well, but comes with mlib, okay, very useful machine learning library, which is helpful and you can use a Spark connector, so you can use SingleStore for persistence, and you could utilize some of the capabilities of Spark, for example, to do processing over data at scale. Other things. Okay, so we do have standard things like SingleStore Python client plus machine learning libraries. Okay, so the portal has a kind of Jupyter environment running. Okay, you can create notebooks, you can import. Very, very useful because now you have an all-in-one environment. Okay, there is no need to run it separately. Now, today, I'm going to be running a little bit of a hybrid environment. Okay, so part of what I'm executing is going to be running locally, and we'll talk about that in a few moments. And then part of it's going to be in the cloud as well. Okay, so that's something that you could make use of too. Vector functions, Euclidean distance, dot product. These have been in the product for quite some time. In fact, vector support was introduced way back in 2017. I think it was a financial customer that originally requested it. Great improvements upon that, enhancements upon that over the last year or two. And I think there's more cool stuff coming along in the very near future. One of the things that I like to use from time to time is this code engine for WebAssembly, simply because if you're doing things, say like sentiment analysis, and again, if you check on DZone, you'll see that there's an article that I published not that long ago, which is about analyzing Stack Overflow comments, and doing sentiment analysis on that. And that is really creating a user-defined function using Rust and a library called VADER, Valence Aware Dictionary and Sentiment Reasoner. Package that up, upload that into the database system, and now the database engine can do something more beyond what it was built with. It has additional capability, and you're extending its capability with a UDF. You could execute that UDF. And in case you're concerned, the UDF actually runs in its own space, okay? So in case there's a bug in your code, for example, it's not going to bring everything crashing down. It runs in its own separate space. But an extremely useful mechanism to extend the capabilities of the database engine, and very, very useful if you want to do sort of machine learning and and have that actually, have it executed by the engine. So essentially, the code, the data, the processing, everything is close together. Then you're not executing stuff in wildly different environments. OpenAI, just one of the LLM providers that we work with. They are a partner. Okay, so just some examples there for you to think about. So one of the things that I think a lot of organizations currently today, and I'm sure you've come across the retrieval augmented generation. This is a super simplistic approach, I understand. But at its heart, I think this is a good kind of workflow that demonstrates the concept. There are many other things that you could do to improve and enhance this. For example, I mean, these days, a lot of the LLM providers, they're providing huge number of tokens that they can generate enormous amounts of text that they can process for you, which is great. But think carefully to yourself. Do you really need all of that? I mean, is that something that's really going to be beneficial to you or helpful to you? Possibly. I mean, if you're dealing with very large documents, that might be something to think about. But at its heart, essentially, you are relying on, this LLM, which, if you have no control over that, say it's hosted in some external environment, then you are really, potentially risking data leaks, okay, and exposure in terms of privacy, personally identifiable information, confidential information. Okay, so you want some have better control of that, the ability to run that in your own environment or an environment that you can manage yourself. And typically, what you would do then is, yes, you have something like SingleStore managing your enterprise data, and you want to do the search and retrieve. Okay, and you'll be able to create the prompts, and we'll look at that in a couple of moments. And then your general AI application. In today's example, the end user is going to be me, and I'm going to be asking the questions. Okay, so the general workflow, simplistic, but I think it shows it, overall in terms of what we tend to want to do. We could drill down and expand upon this. I mean, there's all sorts of other things you could do. So re-ranking, for example, is a concept. And then today, people are talking about agents, for example, the ability to create these pieces of software, code-based, for example, tools, and then you can instruct them, give them the ability to go off and do certain tasks for themselves, which again is beyond the capabilities of the LLM. So if the LLM can't do it, it will look to see, is there something else available, a tool that can perform that task for me. So that's fine. I mean, that doesn't really take away from the overall concept that we have here. So running LLMs privately is a possibility, and particularly if you're working in the cloud, something like a VPC, for example. A number of the excuse me, cloud providers also have this kind of private link concept, which again is very, very useful. But an alternative to this is to actually host and run the LLM yourself. And that's what we'll look at today. Now, just to give you a little bit of a hint, for some time, and if you've been attending these webinars regularly, you know that I occasionally, from time to time, I've shown you slides where I've said we are going to provide GPU support, right? And we are going to give you the option to run LLMs with SingleStore in our environment. And it's finally coming, okay? So it's wait for the announcements. Okay, so I just give you a bit of a hint there, simply because I've talked about it in the past, and I know it's taken a bit of time, but we want to make sure that we do it right. I mean, that's the thing. Okay, we want to do it right. We want to make sure that it works well and it's performant, and it's cost effective for you as well. Okay, so those are the things to think about. Lots of cool stuff, as I said, coming along from engineering. So some of the scenarios that you could use then, well, we've talked about the remote and the local. So today, what I'm going to be doing is I am going to be running things locally on my laptop in terms of the LLM. Okay, I'm going to be using Ollama. And then SingleStore can work in a variety of modes. So today, I'm going to be using it remotely. Okay, so it's running in the cloud. However, you could use, say, a Docker container. You could run it locally. There is a hybrid concept as well, which is interesting. So part of your architecture, if you like, bit of SingleStore could be running locally within your environment, and then part of it could be running in the cloud. And the sync is managed for you, okay, between the two environments. So that's kind of an interesting concept. I think we do have some customers that utilize that, but today we're going to keep it simple, okay? So we are essentially, and let me see if I can draw something instead of just using right. So we are going to be using this one here. Okay, so SingleStore is remote and the LLM is local. Okay, but as you can see, SingleStore will happily work in any of those configurations if that is something that you wish to do so and set it up in that way. Okay, now we're going to use Ollama. So Ollama is pretty awesome. I mean, it is developing still, under development, but it's still pretty robust and usable. So gives you the option for local LLM deployment. Okay, so can manage many different LLMs. I'm going to be running it on my Mac, but it also works on Linux and Windows. And if you've got GPUs, it can utilize those as well. Today, I'm going to be using the smallest DeepSeek model simply because it will happily work with just CPUs. That's something to keep in mind. And it's worth investigating and looking at these models as well, just to get some understanding of the kind of resources they need and where you may feel that it's better to stick to something smaller to start with, just to test it out and experiment with it. And then subsequently, if you decide you need something larger scale, ensure that you have the necessary resources to run that. So a word of caution, some of these models are very large. It's very tempting to download them, right? Gigabytes worth of data. Be careful, all right? And keep in mind that if you try and run some of these, A, you may not have the resources to run it anyway, so it'll be a waste of your time and effort to download it in the first place. Secondly, even if you have the resources on, say, a laptop, you're probably going to melt your machine, all right? So even with the smallest DeepSeek, which just requires CPU, and I've got an M3 Mac, um, it does certain operations make the laptop warm and the fan runs, all right? So that's, at a very small scale here. We're not talking about large machines. So just be aware of that, all right? So keep that in mind. The nice thing about Ollama is it's wide model support. Okay, so in addition, you've got many other possible models that you could use, and depending on your use case, you can pick one that's the most appropriate. Okay, and again, customization and integration. The nice thing about Ollama as well, that integrates with these popular frameworks such as LangChain, Llama Index, etc. And the other thing that is helpful is that Ollama has this kind of OpenAI compatibility as well. So essentially, with a little bit of configuration, which I'll just show you in one of the notebooks, if you have been working with OpenAI, for example, as awesome as their technology is, nevertheless, maybe you want to utilize Ollama, and maybe you've got some projects that you've already utilized OpenAI for. Very simply, a couple of lines you can change, and that will allow you to use something locally. All right, so you don't have to go off and start changing lots and lots of code, which is again very helpful in this kind of phase of understanding how useful these models and LLMs are for business applications. It's good to experiment, in my humble opinion. And in order to do that, you need to have flexibility and choice. Choice is definitely there, no problem. The flexibility comes from this kind of compatibility, which works with one of the leading providers out there, which again is very helpful, particularly if you're at that stage where you're not quite sure which direction you want to take, and maybe you've already invested a little bit of time and effort using something, and then you don't want to have to rewrite all of that code again. So that could be very helpful to you. Okay. So for Ollama itself, I mean, basically, if we just go here, there you go. I mean, that's ollama.com. It's got setup instructions for the three major platforms. Okay, so for Linux, Mac, and Windows. On this Mac, for example, I've got Homebrew. So literally, I just said brew install Ollama, and it's as simple as that. And again, brew update, brew upgrade. From time to time, I run those to get the latest versions, and that downloads the latest builds, which again is very, very helpful. So super simple to get that up and running. These instructions here were just for a previous webinar that I did, where actually I was utilizing the Linux install. So it's a little bit more sort of work in terms of using a curl command, for example, to download it and get the server running, but that's fine. The one thing that I have also done within my environment in order to connect to SingleStore is this kind of export command. Okay, so let me just see if I can get my box here. So this is just set up. And for this, I need my username, my password, okay, the host, the port number, and the database. Okay, and I'll show you where to get that information. And once I've done that, I've just used this export on the command line just before launching Jupyter. And so when I run these notebooks, it's already picked that up automatically for me. And that's helpful because it means you don't have to hard code this into your notebooks. You can just share these with your colleagues. They can do the same in their environment and set it up. And that's as simple as that. Okay, so LangChain helpfully picks that up from the environment itself. Okay, so let's move on and let's take a look here. So hopefully Yukti has shared this with you. All right. Like I said, there's 5 notebooks in there. We'll go through the first 4. The other thing is that the environment, once you've signed up, it will look something like this, okay? They've changed it a little bit. It's continuing being, the UI is continuing being enhanced and improved. And so by default, if we take a look at deployments here, okay, which I'm just clicking in the left nav there, what you'll see is that if this is a new account, you will have something running for you already, okay? There will be some compute here, and there will be a database. Now, I've renamed my database here to this, okay, and I've changed my username as well. The thing to bear in mind is that because this is utilizing a shared environment, and in case you're wondering, what is this all actually running on? It's actually running on an S2, I believe. And I'll show you that in just a moment, okay? So this is a shared environment, and where can you get your details in terms of connectivity is very straightforward. It's from here, okay? This thing here, this connect button. So if I click on this, you can see there's a variety of options here: CLI client, SQL IDE, and so on, your app, BI tools, Mongo client. So if I click on CLI client, here you can see it gives you the username, this long string for the host here, the port number, okay, and your database name, okay. And the password, first time you launch this, you'll be asked to set one. If you need to reset it, you can see there's an option here, reset password, which will allow you to do that, okay. And make a note of it because it will show you once and then it will disappear. And so copy it, save it somewhere, or if you've forgotten, just reset it. It's as simple as that. So very, very straightforward. For some environments, for this shared tier, you will need this SSL certificate, okay, which you can download from here. But for today, it's not required, okay. It's this is all the information you need. Set this up, okay. So I'll close that in a moment. Now, this is great, okay. So this is the free shared tier. So very quickly, then, at the top here, you can see that. Let me just get my box here. This section. So there is an arrow here. Okay, and if I click on this arrow, it gives me an option here. It says new deployment. So let me select this. And here you can see that it won't let me create another starter workspace because you're only allowed one. But my $600 worth of credits can go a long way in terms of standard. Okay, that gives you more options. And then you can choose your group name here. You can choose your cloud provider. So currently, you can see this is set to AWS currently. It could be GCP, could be Azure. Let me just set this back. And then you just choose your region. So in my case, for example, let's have a look. London is way down at the bottom there. Europe West 2. Okay, so I'll leave, there's a couple of options there you can choose. Deploy in 2 availability zones, opt into preview features and updates. I'll leave those blank. And then we'll just do next here. Okay, and run this. And then here, again, I can change my workspace name here. Currently, it's set to workspace 1. And then at the size, this is where I can configure the resources I need. So currently, it's set to the smallest one, which is an S00. Okay, so if I select Edit here, I can choose something larger. And so I mentioned a few moments ago S2. So that is 16 virtual CPUs, 128 gigabytes of memory, and that will burn through 2.25 credits per hour. Okay, and I believe all of the free shared tier that we offer actually is hosted on one S2. So think about that. You get pretty awesome performance, and that's not bad going. I mean, that is very capable in terms of the environment, very cost effective as well. Okay. SingleStore Kai here. We'll talk about that in a future webinar. Okay, so that's the MongoDB compatibility. And then all you need to do is just say create workspace. And for this one, because you've configured it and set it up yourself, it does take a couple of minutes to provision. Okay, remember it's doing a lot of stuff for you in the background in terms of plumbing and setting everything up. All right, now we don't need this for today, so I'll just hit the back button here. And again, go back here. So whatever is running here is absolutely fine. I've saved these details, my credentials and the host and the port and everything, and I've set that up in my environment. So all of that is running fine. Okay. And then here I've got Jupyter running. Okay. And this is the very first of the notebooks. So let me keep an eye on the time. So we're doing well. It's 6:30 my time. Okay, so let's work through this. Okay, so remember, these are the first four notebooks on the GitHub repo. The fifth one is Kai. So that's not something we're going to look at today. But essentially, one of the things that it's helpful to do, and remember, DeepSeek comes in various flavors. And if you go to the Ollama website and look at models, for example, here you've got a couple of options. You know, whether you want to use something just for creating embeddings, if you're doing vision, for example, or if you need tool support, and they are listed in terms of popularity. Okay, and you can change that as well in terms of what's the newest one. So that's very helpful. So we could go to tools, for example, and let's have a look at the most popular. So I think let's scroll down a little bit. You can see some of these, right? Quite a good list in terms of the choice that you have available. And installing this is very, very simple and straightforward. Okay, so let's go back, just deselect that. Okay, so here's the DeepSeek R1. Okay, now the reason we're using R1 is because it shows you its reasoning. Okay, that's useful. You get to see its kind of thinking, if you like, in detail. It can be very verbose, lots of information it will tell you, and you need time to read it, okay, to see how it's doing. And as you can see, it's available in a variety of different flavors. So I've got the smallest one here, which is 1.5 billion, but you can see there's others. That's 7, that's 8. As said before, I mean, it goes all the way to 671. There are providers out there that will host and run and give you the option to utilize these, for which I think you will pay for their services. Like I said, please be careful. Don't download the largest one. A, it will probably take a long time. And B, you may not necessarily have the resources to run it, which will be a terrible shame and a terrible waste. Okay, so start small and work your way up. Okay, so when you do this, it will just give you the simple instruction and give you a bit of information there on that. Okay, so there we go. So this was updated 2 months ago, and I actually had nearly 40 million downloads, so that's pretty good going. Okay, so this have a look at this one and this one. There we go. So I think that's overall in terms of where we are. Okay, so let me just minimize this a moment. Let me just do this for a sec. Okay, what I want to do is just pull up my CLI, okay, which is this. So you can see I've got Jupyter running here, and in the other terminal here, okay, let's just clear this. So if I do here Ollama list, for example, so it shows me the models that I currently have. So I've got, oops, right, so it looks like my magnifier is not going to work well in that case, but I can point to you. Okay, so this is the sort of DeepSeek. Okay, so you can see it's 1.1 gigabytes, and it was last modified 2 hours ago. I mean, in the sense that I've been using it. I've got a couple of other ones here. You can see the various sort of sizes here. And one of the things that you can do is that you can run this directly from here. So here, for example, if I issue the command DeepSeek run, sorry, Ollama run DeepSeek, okay, and then give it the specific, R1, 1.5B, it will do that. There we are. It's ready, and I could just straight away start using it. So I could say, who was the last man on the moon? Okay, let's ask the question. There we go. And it shows you it's kind of thinking. So using between these kind of think tags, okay, it goes on for a little bit. And then right at the end, it gives you the answer, okay? So, which is essentially saying the last man to land on the moon was Michael Collins. After Buzz Aldrin stepped into space in 1970, he and Armstrong were left on the lunar module, which continues its journey to Earth. In 72, Michael Collins performed a mission to reland him back onto the moon's surface. Now, is that correct? Is that true? All right. Hard to know unless you actually know that was the case. All right. Let me just do Control D to get out of the prompt there. All right. So let's go back here, launch this again. Okay. So I did mention I'm running Jupyter. Okay. So this is the first case here. What I wanted to do was to test DeepSeek's ability to, give it a couple of different types of problems and see how well did it perform. One was this code generation and explanation. And I have deliberately commented out the actual prompt and this bit of code here simply because I didn't want to execute this by mistake. It takes 15 minutes of time to run. And the question I asked it was, write a Python function that sorts a list of numbers using the quicksort algorithm and then explain the code step by step. It thinks about it, and my laptop gets very warm. And then eventually it gives me a response, and it goes on and on and on and on. Pages and pages of information showing you its thinking process and kind of backtracking and deciding, oh, this path isn't the right one, I'll go down this one, try this. And at the end of it, the actual example in terms of the output that you see on the GitHub repo, and I left it there, okay, because I mean it will change, okay, I'm sure it will. You may well see something else different. I asked it for Python code, it gave me Java, and then it gave me something that doesn't work, okay. So no, you get zero for that. Didn't come out very well. But the explanation, like I said, if you really want to analyze it and get into the fine detail, that can be helpful in terms of its thinking process. Okay, so somewhere along the way, it suddenly decided to switch from Python to Java for some reason, and then the eventual code doesn't even solve the problem. Okay, so not very good there. Here's another one, mathematical problem solving. Give it this kind of classic problem in terms of a train leaves, a city at this time and it's traveling at this speed, and then another train is leaving another city at another time and it's traveling at a different speed. The distance between these two cities is X miles. When will these two trains meet? So on this one, the few times that I've run this, generally it's got the answer correct. Okay, I've noticed though a few times again it comes up not very good in terms of it's made some mistakes along the way, so that needs some more detailed analysis. Creative writing and constraints. Just ask it to write me a story. Give it some constraints and then limit it to 200 words and say, okay, here's a couple of words that I want you to use as part of this story that you're going to write for me. Generally, for this one, it does well. Okay, so it certainly meets within the requirement, the 200-word constraint, and it uses the words that I've asked it to use. So yes, get a plus for that. And then question and answering with context. Again, this one is a little bit mixed in terms of each time you run it, comes up with slightly different. Sometimes it gets this correct, sometimes it doesn't. The example that you see in terms of the output, I think on the GitHub repo, it hasn't got that right. And then I actually analyzed that in the article. So this is Marie Curie was a pioneering scientist known for her work on radioactivity. She won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1903. So that's the context. And then the question I was saying was, what was Marie Curie's most significant contribution to science? And then this is a slightly different output. Okay, so in this particular one, it claims it was radioactivity. But if you look at the output in the one that I think you download from GitHub, which is the original test that I ran, it actually gets it some bits of it right, some bits of it wrong. So overall, results are varied. which is perhaps typical. There's definitely some hallucination going on there. But again, can you do anything to mitigate that? Well, the way that this is being run, no, not in this particular approach that's being used with Ollama. You could possibly do this if you're using chat, okay, which is this next example here. So this is using DeepSeek R1 with OpenAI chat. And so what I've done here is that, remember, we talked a few minutes ago about OpenAI compatibility built into Ollama. So I've simply utilized that here. And so this is the kind of secret sauce, if you like, here. Essentially, we're just saying the Ollama client is OpenAI. The base URL is this, which is the local host that's running, localhost port 11434 /v1. And then the API key is just Ollama, all right? And then this is kind of behaving as though I'm using OpenAI. So in this particular one, the classic question, what is the answer to life, the universe, and everything? Again, depending, I mean, if you've read Douglas Adams, you know the answer 42, okay? But again, rerun this, and you'll find it, it gives you different answers. And in this particular case, what I've done is I've suppressed its thinking here, which you can easily change by just switching this Boolean from true to false. Okay. If you really want to see the verbose output, that can be interesting sometimes. And that can be helpful in terms of seeing, how it's actually figuring out the answer. But sometimes it's just a little bit overwhelming. So very useful in terms of configuration, certainly as far as Ollama is concerned, give you this ability. So that allows you to test it out, okay, without too much trouble. So pretending you're kind of OpenAI, if you like. And then moving on, the last two examples here, what we're doing is this is where I'm utilizing SingleStore, where I've actually, remember I mentioned I've got this export in my environment set up pointing to my database. So in this particular case, I'm using LangChain. I've just created a couple of documents about llamas. Very simple. What's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines, 6 very small documents. And then we are just storing them in SingleStore. So notice that there's no connectivity information provided in the notebook itself. It's just picking that up from the environment, which, like I said before, can be very useful. You're not hard coding anything into the notebook itself. And so we're using one of the embedding models, MiniLM, okay, which is here. So if you were sharp-eyed a little bit earlier when we were looking at the command line, you will have noticed that I've already downloaded that. That's a very small download, very useful for creating these vector embeddings. And so this is what's happening here. So LangChain is creating these vector embeddings. We're creating the vector embeddings using MiniLM, and then we're storing, using LangChain to store both the original text and the embeddings into SingleStore. And then we're doing a similarity search just below here. So just ask it, what animals are llamas related to? That's fine. That works really well. Okay. And then just below here, passing that in to DeepSeek, giving it the data and the response that's come back there to ask it a bit more information. And again, it's the original first time I ran this, again, it's a mixture of correct and incorrect statements. And the only way you know that it's incorrect is if you study and know anything about llamas and the types of animals they are. Do they have tails? Have they got hooves? All of this kind of, you have to have this kind of what's it? They call this grouping of sort of experts, if you like. You need more. It's like utilizing another LLM to check the first LLM. It's kind of like that, okay? Or if you are an expert in the field yourself, you will know whether the answer is correct or not. You pick up elements of what may seem correct. So again, it's a bit of a mixture, bit of a hit and miss there. So again, you run this and rerun this, and you get slightly different answers. And then the final one here, this is kind of taking everything that we've learned in the previous 3 examples. Here we're doing something more substantial, hopefully a little bit more useful here as well. We are essentially taking a PDF document, could be more than one. This happens to be something from the Northern Ireland investment, okay, investni.com. It is about fintech. And I just took that PDF document, chunked it up, stored that into SingleStore, again, using LangChain. So both the original text and the embeddings using MiniLM are stored in SingleStore, and then asking the question, what are the best investment opportunities in blockchain? Doing a similarity search that gives me some context, pull that back out, and then pass that as well as the original prompt to DeepSeek and ask it the question, give me the sort of investment opportunities in blockchain technology. Again, bit of a hit and miss. So the original first time I ran it, it gets some stuff right, it gets some of it wrong. Some of it is ambiguous, not quite clear where the answer should lie. And again, it relies upon you having some understanding of what this is, or using something else to verify what it's returning. And there are good things that are returned, but overall, it's challenging, I think, unless you are an expert in the field and you understand the responses that it's providing. So I think overall, my assessment is okay, that, yep, this is very helpful. Great way to test LLMs without requiring too much time, effort, or resources. It's great that we have these kind of open models being released and they get better every day, all the time. There are improvements. Um, there are ways that you can fine tune these as well. There's guidance on doing this, plenty of examples out there as well, something that may be better for your specific scenario and use case rather than the general purpose, which is what we're using here. And there are things that you can do to mitigate some of the problems and errors that you see. For example, using the temperature settings, for example, being a bit more stringent. And then, maybe using multiple LLMs. So one checks the answer for the other one. That is some practice that I've seen out there as well. Um, Great way to get started. So definitely Ollama, DeepSeek, and great for learning in terms of understanding how this stuff can be configured and set up, and just for testing it out. That's very helpful. Skill up. I would highly recommend that, and I think that's going to be very useful for you. So, like I said, the results. I mean, am I disappointed? No. I mean, I think it met my expectation in the sense that I knew that some of the responses that would be returned would be wrong. Um, I had to check some of the answers as well because I'm not an expert in all of the fields that we've discussed today, but I took the time to just go and check its answers and verify. So overall, it's some answers 100% spot on, absolutely correct. Some a mixture of being a bit vague, not quite correct there. And then therefore you need to be careful, particularly in that last scenario where we are actually asking for guidance and what are the best investment strategies. If you're looking for 100% concrete answers, be careful, okay? Because you may get back some responses that look correct, may be meaningful, but again, if you are an expert in the field, I mean, it was something that you would be able to check or verify, or get someone else to verify that for you. That would be very useful. Okay, so benefits of doing this locally: greater control and privacy, reduces risk, unauthorized access, or data breaches. Okay, you can do this within your environment. It's cost effective, avoid subscription fees or usage-based billing, even though most of the usage costs for these LLMs has gone down significantly. So I remember originally when I started using OpenAI uh, a while back, it was like $20 or $30 to run a project. And I stopped doing it. And then 18 months later, you're paying pennies. Okay. And today, the cost is so low, I don't even bother claiming it back from single store in expenses because it is so low. So it's great from that perspective. However, having something installed locally may be what you are looking for in terms of giving you more confidence and control over what you are using, and uh, the ability to fine tune it and so on. Okay. Hopefully, faster inference times and reduced latency. Well, my Mac laptop is not the ideal scenario for testing this at scale for some kind of enterprise application, but I am happy with the overall results of this. It works well. I mean, generally, you would allocate more resources internally within your organizations, and there's plenty of scope for customization and fine tuning as well. Okay, so that gives you a lot of headroom to play around with. Okay, so famous quote from C. Clarke, which I always use: "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic." So this stuff looks very magical. It's almost like human-like responses in terms of what's coming back, the ability to talk to this thing, and it gives you these responses back. Pretty cool stuff. But like I said, this is advancing at a very, very rapid pace. Things are improving all the time. Models are improving all the time. And I think, you by all means investigate, test, do POCs, etc. But be aware that there are still limitations around this technology, and therefore you need to do this with your eyes wide open. Okay, I'd strongly recommend take the opportunity to keep everything under control. I mean, and I know it's overwhelming, a lot to take in terms of the pace that this stuff is moving, but move at your own pace, at what you feel is comfortable, whatever is relevant, and how you think it may be useful to you in kind of business projects that you are working on, and how it may be help you in terms of the business that you're in. Okay. With that, let me stop there. And today I finished early, Yuxi, so we do have time for some questions. So awesome. There we go.
Hi everyone. So now we are officially open for the Q&A session. Actually, Akmal, I have one question for you. Just give
Yes.
me a second. Let me pull it up. It's regarding the credits. We have one question from Christoph.
Yeah.
Actually, I had a chat with him. So he's curious about the free credits that we offer. I have a question. Like, apparently, when you just sign up for Single Store's free account, there are, I think, 167 credits that are already present in your account. So that's what we are talking about when we say that we are giving away for $600 of free credits, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, amazing. That's
That's
number
right.
one. And
Yeah.
second is that actually they are testing for a small company. So is it okay? Like how can they get a little bit more credits because they're obviously using single store just for testing their current
Yeah.
use case. So, Christopher, if you're still with us right now, you can drop in any questions in the Q&A
Yeah.
box. So yeah, that's the thing. So I was thinking that we can actually forward. We can actually ask Brendan about this, or maybe Matt. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I was thinking. But if you know anything about it, like if it's possible, I actually recommended signing up with another email address to
Yeah.
do that because these
Yes.
credits will last pretty long, right?
They
So
can do, yes. If you manage the environment and the resources carefully, you can make this last a long time. Let me give you an example. I mean, normally when I sign in, actually along the top, and I think I hit the close button. That's why we can't see it. But generally, along the top, there is typically like a black bar, which tells you how many credits you have and what the equivalent is in dollars. And so I mean, it's nearly 4 years now since I joined SingleStore. I created an account when I joined. That account I haven't touched for a little while, but I know it's still got credits there. So you can actually make these run quite a long time. Obviously, if you fire up something like an S00, it'll burn through about 0.25, 0.28 credits per hour. And so if you're doing testing for, a couple of hours or even longer, over a weekend or something like that, that's more than enough. And you'll still have quite a lot left over. If you would like more, just reach out to us and just request them. So down the bottom there somewhere, I think you'll see there is something like a chat. Let me just see if I can open that up. Okay. So you get something like this. How can we help? Okay. So you can reach out and send a message to actually, is that a picture of Brendan? I'm not sure if that's actually
that's what I was
him.
thinking as well.
Is
You can
that him?
directly reach out to Brendan from here.
Could be him. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
But
what it is.
yes,
Yeah.
the thing is, just reach out. Okay, just use the messaging capability to send a message, and then just request if you can have additional credits. Just mention, you're running a bit low. You're running a project, and that you're doing some evaluation, and could you have some credits added? And that's one possibility. Your suggestion, I think, is another one. You can just create another account, but obviously there is a pain there in terms of you've used one environment, you need to export your data, and notebooks are easy, so they can be easily exported. But you'd have to get your data out and then back in again to the new account, which is a bit annoying, but possible. So that's certainly possible. An alternative is that if you wish, try the Docker container, okay, which you can fire up, but I mean, that's like one node, right? You're not getting much in terms of processing power, and I'm not sure how much in terms of memory that consumes either. It's something I've never used. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, that was really clear. We
Yeah,
have a lot of more questions for you, Akmal. So,
yeah, yeah,
one
sure, sure.
question from earlier from the webinar,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
say from Malak, they say what code engine is using where this is not very clear. One second.
Yeah, yeah.
What's code engine using WebAssembly used for? So I
Okay.
don't
So
really
yes,
got.
so code engine, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. Let's see if we can go back. Okay, just whiz through the slides very, very quickly. Here we go. All right. So code engine is just the name of the technology. Okay. And currently, we're using WebAssembly. Okay, so WebAssembly is and if you search around, you'll see that it's a way that you can run code. I think typically in the browser, that's how it originally started, but it's using sort of bytecode. Okay, and so what SingleStore allows you to do, and there is I think there's an initiative. Off the top of my head, I've forgotten the name, but there is, a number of vendors are part of that, as well as vendors that don't explicitly work in the space, as well as academia as well, that is helping to develop all of this. But this is very useful because, as I said before, even someone like me, I was able to take a little bit of Rust code. I was able to take this library here, which is called VADER, okay, Valence Aware Dictionary and Sentiment Reasoner. I packaged that up, and incidentally, I've got an article on that as well. Okay, so either search on DZone or you can check on Medium under my articles where I specifically show how to do this. Okay, you need to set up the environment with all the necessary SDK, pardon me, SDKs. Well, once you do that, I mean, it's a one-time operation. Then essentially you're just building, once you've defined your code, you just build that. It's a module, you upload that into SingleStore. SingleStore will treat that as a UDF. And now you're able to extend the capabilities of the engine. So the engine comes with some built-in functions already, quite extensive, but now what you can do is extend its capabilities with new things that it hasn't seen before. Now you're giving it new code that it can execute. So this particular example, which I've used a few times, is for sentiment analysis, which is what VADER is good for. So you can use that. The database engine treats it as a function, a UDF, and it will execute that for you, and you can use that as part of SQL statements as well. So very, very useful in terms of adding some functionality and capability that you have in mind, which is not supported by the database engine itself. Okay, really useful feature. Hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, we actually have more questions. So there is one very relevant question that is regarding, just give me a second. I need to find that. Yeah, this question is from Mario. They say that, just give me a second. I'm not able to find it again. No, this question is from Francis. That's what I will take first. They
Yeah.
say that the question is involved because DeepSeek was involved in some privacy issues. So
Yeah.
is it safe for testing like you have presented today?
Yeah, that's a great question. Just within the last day or two, I saw in my LinkedIn feed there was, I think, a report, and I forget which agency from the United States published the report. I should have saved it, actually, saved the link. But they did an analysis and of DeepSeek and some of the kind of issues around that. The thing is, if you have some privacy concerns, you wouldn't run it perhaps on DeepSeek's own environment and own platform. These models, as you saw in this particular case today, for example, I have downloaded it and it's local. Now it may be trained and on certain data. There may be things that may be omitted, for example, that may be because of where it comes from. Okay, China, for example. But if you're comfortable with that and you are happy in terms of the some of the restrictions and limitations around it, keep in mind that lots of providers out there are hosting it and allowing people to use it. So that's one of the things to think about. Now, we use DeepSeek today. Remember, Ollama happily works with lots of other models as well. So if this is something that concerns you and you're worried about the possibilities of information leakage, for example, or something surrounding the use of that technology, then plenty of others to choose from. Okay. It just so happens that because this kind of R1 gives you reasoning in terms of explanation, that's very, very useful. It can help you see what it's actually doing, how it's arriving at an answer for you, and therefore to use the extreme case, for example, when I asked it, I want quicksort and I want it in Python, show me your thinking. Yes, it showed me the thinking, started off thinking in terms of building Python code. Towards the end of it, I get a Java solution, and the Java solution doesn't work either. So I mean, it's very long. I just haven't got the time to read through all of that right now. But at least if I work through that, I'm sure there's a point where it's somehow, for some reason, it switched from one thing to another, and that would be kind of useful to understand. Because if that occurs in that particular instance, it may do so in other cases as well. I'm sure it would do so. Okay, it's again, this is not unique to DeepSeek. I think all LLMs to some degree or other will suffer from this. Some perhaps less so. Technology is getting better all the time. Even just within the last day or two, OpenAI announced a whole bunch of new models as well. Very confusing in terms of naming. I wish they keep things simple and just show you what it is. Give it an easy name to remember. What's all this O3 and O4 mini and so on, nano and so on. Confusing. So sorry, that's just me.
So it seems like we are almost like at time, but we have
Yeah.
one more question. We have time for that. Uh, One question is from Max. They say, when we are running Ollama locally, can we be sure that no customer data leaves our environment? Also, as an organization, do we need a contract with Meta to download and host the model locally? And do you know if what kind of cost this represents for the organization?
Oh, yeah, the great questions there. And these are great kind of business questions too. So it's not just about the technology. What I would strongly recommend is that with Ollama, yes, everything is being run locally. It's a self-contained environment. All right. Now, if you're worried about any of this stuff kind of phoning home, put it in a sandbox, restrict any output connection to the outside world just to see, if anything is trying to phone home or connect outside. But as far as I know, it's not. I mean, all of this is local and it's running locally. And do you need to check the licensing? That's a great question. I'd need to think about that. I think generally for anything that you can download with Ollama, you have very good uh, expressive kind of licenses. Check the licensing terms specifically to see what it allows you to do. I mean, generally, any Apache or MIT kind of licensing is very flexible. You can use it for pretty much anything you want. I mean, if you customize it and do a lot of additional work on it, the license may require you to share what you've done in terms of the fine tuning, so on. But I think far and away, the licensing tends to be very generous, as far as I'm aware. But that's a great question. Let me look into that as well. Actually, I need to educate myself on that as well. That's an awesome question because at the end of the day, there is no point utilizing this technology if there are, business considerations and legal considerations that you haven't taken into account as you are starting to utilize this. So some really good points there. Thank you very much for that. And I apologize, I haven't got a great answer for you, but I will look into that myself.
All right, so seems like we are at time, almost 5 minutes up. So I'm really sorry that we'll have to end the session now. But if you have any other questions that you feel like really need to be taken up, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and drop in your question, or you can directly connect with Akmal as well. And
Yes,
you
I
can
do
email
have an
us at
email.
webinars@singlestore.com, and we'll take care of your question. And if there's anything else as well, any feedback regarding today's session, feel free to drop a message, and we'd love to hear what projects you're working working on. So we can also, maybe do a session on that that's relevant. So we have amazing sessions that are also coming up. Akmal, can you please go to that slide? Amazing.
It'll
So,
have to be all the way at the beginning, you see. So normally we copy these and make duplicates
okay.
towards the end. Well, there we go. That wasn't too bad. That's quite
Yeah.
fast.
Fine.
Okay.
So,
Uh,
okay, so we have amazing webinars that are there on our event page. Basically, yesterday we did uh, on April 23rd, we did a partner webinar. So, if that's interesting to you, it's with Colibra. So, it's called Building Trust in AI Analytics, Real-Time Data Meets Governance. So, it's a very interesting topic, and it's something different, excuse me, from what we usually do. So, and on May 1st, we are doing, I'm so sorry. So from on May 1st, we are doing from JSON to vectors, building AI search with SingleStore Kai. And this session will also be done by Akmal. So feel free to join if you like today's session. This will also be a very highly informative session. So, and on May 21st, that's the partner webinar. Again, it's called Building Real-Time Data Pipelines using Estuary and SingleStore. So if you like this session, stay tuned and we'll come to you with more sessions and stay tuned for our follow-up email, which will have the resources to everything in case you missed for this webinar. The recording will be available. And no, we actually don't share the slides. I'm really sorry we don't make them public. But yeah, this was it for today's session. Thank you, Akmal, for helping us out with today's webinar. And
You're
thanks
welcome.
everyone for attending. And we really value your time and energy. So if there's anything that you felt like that needs feedback, feel free to reach out and have a great rest of the day. Thanks for attending. Take care,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.
Bye.